God of War Ragnarok becomes PlayStation's fastest selling launch. Uh, this story suggests that PlayStation announced on Twitter their recent release, God of War Ragnarok, is its fastest selling first party game. At the time of the writing, it had sold over 5.1 million copies within the first week and set a record for sales for the God of War franchise. The game launched earlier this month, November 9th, for PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. A lot of speculation, at least in this article, suggests that it sold so well because it was not exclusive to PS5. While those sales are up, it's not widely distributed as the previous God of Wars, given supply chain issues. Sony has not yet given specifics on the sales by console, so we don't know how many were PS4 sales or PS5 sales. Lindsay, batter up. What do you think of God of War Ragnarok? Is this 5.1 million copies within the first week and record sales something to brag about? Is it curious that we don't know whether or not or how many of these are exclusive to PS5 and PS4? What do you think about this story?
Okay, I have a couple thoughts. One is that I do think that we've been in a bit of a games desert for so long that this has been like the oasis for weary travelers for sure. So I think that PlayStation definitely got a boost just from the lack of games out there. And I don't want to discount that I know that God of War has a lot of fans as well. So when there's already a games desert and then you put out a game that had a pretty solid showing for the first one, I think you're guaranteed to have a bit of a sales boost there. The exclusivity thing is, like, super interesting to me, though, because I've also read a lot of comments about people saying, like, "Ah, I'm just gonna wait." So I don't
Yep.
know. I feel like PlayStation shot themselves in the foot a little bit, with not I mean, they've started releasing more games on PC. I feel like their sales would have been doubled if they had just gone right away with non-exclusivity. I know so many people who are just waiting the year or 2 to be able to play it themselves, and in the meantime, watching trailers and playing other games. So, I still am not convinced by the exclusivity model. I'm sure that Sony has significantly better numbers than I do to be able to fully make that decision. But all in all, I mean, good for Sony, good for PlayStation. I mean, it was a good time to release a game that was met with a lot of critical acclaim, so nice work.
Chris, I heard you saying, yeah, nodding your head. Do you echo Lindsay's sentiment? Is there anything you want to add to her view on exclusivity not really being the home run that these developers think it to be?
Well, I actually disagree. I do think it's a home run. When I look at God of War selling 5.1 million for its release date, Spider-Man, when that released, right, that was their last big prime, exclusive product. They sold 3.3 million copies their first week. So it's a pretty significant, number compared to a previous first whatever it's called title. Sorry for not sounding very smart. However, the holiday play I think is really where things get interesting because I personally have a God of War, copy that is sitting in the closet right now waiting for the holidays for my kids. So the question is, how much more sales are we going to see for this title in the next upcoming weeks as the holiday season approaches? And again, it's a pretty big number when you remember how impactful the Spider-Man PS4, product was coming out the gates. It was highly anticipated by a really great development team, and the reviews are really high. And now Spider-Man's on PC, right? Maybe 2-3 years later. So it's just going to be something I think ends up on PC eventually because it's how you just keep a title's life continuing. And yeah, again, I just want to nod my head in that there's a lot of units that they pushed out because more likely than not, what have we gotten this year? The last big title was what, Elden Ring, and that was the first quarter. So it's kind of exciting to see. Just it's going to be a big number.
Want to catch up on chat here, guys. Matt also agreeing with you, Chris. I think he goes, this and COD have both exploded recently because of the game's desert. Between those two games and Elden Ring, it feels like a new sales record. It's constantly being broken. How much of that is attributed to the lack of any competition? But I'm excited as well to see how these games continue to uphold their leads, their sales records through the holiday season, per Chris's comment. I'm curious why they didn't show the distribution or the breakdown between PS4 and PS5. honestly, to me, it sounds like it's probably because it's not that impressive. I would argue that there's probably still a
Right.
large PS4 gamer base that it's a lot higher than they'd like to admit. And to your point, Chris, it suggests that they need to be distributing it more broadly on PC or otherwise. I remember buying, I think it was a PS2 Slim, so I could play the original God of War and also an Uncharted series back then. And I did buy it just for that because they were exclusive. And after I beat the games, I think I went back on my Xbox and returned the PlayStation. I can't remember the last time a game made me feel like that, other than perhaps Spider-Man, getting a PlayStation just to play Spider-Man. Paul also here in the chat saying, didn't Sony say they wanted to do more on PC? They release PC peripherals and then don't put out their major holiday game on PC? Sounds like siloed teams internally.
Mm.
Sony is expanding, right? Not just on games, but on their hardware. We covered several stories from Sony on different peripherals, Paul, and monitors. We thought that it was smart of them to get out of the pure console area when we covered those stories because of that exact reason.
But don't you want to have a reason to, make sure that PlayStation 5 is the Cabbage Patch Kids again of, this holiday season? I mean, there's not a lot of these consoles still out there. And now you're like, again, the market is run by children, right? And they all want their new PS5 and adult children like myself. So I do think that, putting it to PC would be kind of short-sighted because you're still trying to push your PS5 console.
It's going to be interesting to see Sony's plays, I think, in the future. I think these are a lot of solid comments and insights, guys, from you collectively, from chat. Don't know quite how to make heads or tails of what Sony's doing. We praise them in some directions and in some stories, and then other stories, to Paul's comment, it sounds like there's miscommunication or just not strong strategic alignment on what the priority is, what the consistent message is, and what that should be.